The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a sense of impending change. Sarah stood at her bedroom window, her heart racing as she peered into the distance. A storm was brewing, but it wasn't the storm outside that unsettled her there. It was the chaos that had recently erupted in her life. Today was the day her mother's new husband and his son were moving in. Just one more trial to endure, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Sarah had never envisioned a life shared with a stranger, let alone a family member she never asked for. The very thought made her stomach churn. She turned away from the window, her thoughts swirling like the dark clouds above. As the sound of gravel crunching under tires broke the eerie silence, her heart sunk. They're here. Sarah reluctantly descended the creaky staircase, feeling like a ghost in her own home. Each step echoed the uncertainty swirling in her mind. Would they be kind, annoying, or simply even more isolating? In the driveway, an old blue pickup truck stood still. Its faded paint resembled the remnants of a life half-lived. It felt almost like a metaphor for the turmoil she felt inside. A tall, handsome figure emerged from the driver's side, his tousled hair and sun-kissed skin hinting at an adventurous spirit. It was her new stepbrother, Jake. At first glance, he appeared calm, but there was something in his hazel eyes that mirrored her own apprehension. He quickly scanned the surroundings, a flicker of vulnerability brushing across his face. Sarah felt momentarily guilty for wishing him to be anything but charming. A part of her hoped he would be obnoxious, someone she could easily dislike. As Jake unloaded boxes from the truck, Sarah noticed a distinct shift in the atmosphere around him. He handled the belongings gingerly, treating them as treasures rather than mere items. This intrigued her. Apparently, there was more depth to him than just a handsome exterior. However, that didn't change her resolve to keep him at arm's length. "Sarah," her mother called from the front porch, her voice bright and cheerful. "Come help with the—" "No," Sarah interjected, crossing her arms. "I'll be in my room." With that, she retreated, leaving her mother's hopeful gaze behind her. Alone in her sanctuary, she leaned against her bed, letting out a deep sigh. How could she escape this? Her life was suddenly plagued by the prospect of shared space, shared laughter, and gasped the potential for shared secrets. Oh, how she wished life were like a TV show where storms could simply be resolved in 30 minutes. But no, real life unspooled at its own unpredictable pace, weaving conflict and resolution into a complex tapestry filled with threads of heartache and joy. If only she could fast forward to a time when everything felt normal again, when her world wasn't turned upside down by a new family member. Hours later, after her mother had insisted on a welcome dinner, Sarah found herself seated at the dining table, her heart pounding as Jake took the seat across from her. The table was adorned with a simple but inviting setting, a bouquet of wildflowers, the aromatic scent of roasted chicken wafting through the air, and a warm glow from the flickering candles. Her mother beamed at them, clearly thrilled with the blending of their families. "Isn't this nice?" her mother chimed, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. "Yeah, real nice," Sarah muttered under her breath. She picked at her food, stealing glances at Jake. He was quiet but observant, his gaze occasionally meeting hers, sending an unusual flutter through her chest. Why did it feel as though he could see right through her defenses? As they ate, the conversation flowed smoothly, but Sarah felt like an outsider looking in. Jake shared stories about his favorite places to ride horses, his adventures exploring the outdoors. Her curiosity piqued. She had always found horses majestic, but never considered spending time with one. Then, something strange happened. Just as Jake animatedly described a recent horseback trip to the woods, a loud bang erupted from outside. They all turned toward the sound, and suddenly, the heavy wooden door swung open, revealing an elegant chestnut horse standing there. The room stilled, and Sarah's eyes widened. "What is that horse doing here?" "Looks like it follows you," Jake remarked, his voice teasing but tinged with curiosity. He stood cautiously stepping toward the doorway. "Wait," Sarah shouted, her mind racing as she sprinted after him. "Don't go near it. It might run away." Yet as they approached, Sarah was stunned to see that the horse didn't bolt. Instead, it stood there, swishing its tail, looking remarkably calm, as if it had been waiting for them. Jake reached out slowly, coaxing the horse closer. The creature seemed to recognize him, nudging his shoulder affectionately. Sarah stepped back, a mix of awe and apprehension swirling within her. How did it even get here? She wondered aloud. Animals have a way of knowing, Jake replied, his face lighting up with excitement. It's like it chose us. Sarah found herself captivated by the horse's gentle demeanor. The tension that had hovered around her like a storm cloud began to lighten. The horse stepped closer to her, and she stood frozen, feeling as though the connection they shared was something profound. Maybe it's a sign, Jake said, looking between Sarah and the horse, that we should get to know each other, or that I need to escape this situation, she thought. But his sincerity softened her heart just a fraction. In that suspended moment, they stood united, a girl, her stepbrother, and a horse that brought them together in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The chaos of their new reality, initially daunting, began to feel a little more bearable, like a winding trail offering unknown adventures ahead. But even as hope flickered on the horizon, Sarah couldn't shake the fear of what lay ahead. Would she be able to embrace this new life? Would Jake and she truly connect? Or was their bond destined to fray like an unwashed bridle? The answers remained elusive, shrouded in the mist of uncertainty. But for now, she decided to take a step forward, just as the horse had entered her previously solitary world. After all, every great journey begins with a single step, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could find her place in this unfolding story. Finding common ground. The sun was just beginning to rise the next morning, casting a golden hue across the horizon, hinting at a new day filled with possibilities. Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. The image of the horse's gentle eyes and calming presence lingered in her mind, stirring emotions she hadn't expected to feel. Jake's voice echoed in her ears. Maybe it's a sign. Was it? Could a horse really bridge the gap between them? Or was it just a twist of fate playing tricks on her? Deciding that she needed an escape from her racing thoughts, she threw on her favorite hoodie, grabbed her worn-out sneakers, and stepped outside. The air was brisk, carrying the scent of dew-kissed grass and the promise of adventure. She felt an undeniable urge to find the horse again, to see if it still lingered nearby, as if it held the key to understanding this new world she was reluctantly stepping into. As she ambled down the quiet road leading to the meadow, memories of Jake crept back into her mind. He was charming in ways that frustrated her, effortlessly straddling the line between confidence and vulnerability. How could someone she hardly knew create such a pull on her emotions? Shaking her head, she decided to focus on the task ahead. When Sarah reached the clearing, her breath hitched as she spotted the horse grazing peacefully at the edge of the meadow. Sunlight danced off its chestnut coat, making it shine like a polished gem. A sense of tranquility engulfed her. Maybe this really was a sign that things could change. With cautious steps, she approached the horse, who raised its head as if sensing her presence. Nervously, Sarah extended a hand, remembering Jake's gentle nature with it. "Hey there, beautiful," she murmured, surprised by her own soothing voice. It felt right to speak this way, free from judgment. Just as she began to feel a connection, she heard footsteps approaching. Startled, she turned to see Jake walking toward her, a wide grin plastered on his face. "I knew I'd find you here." "Great," Sarah mumbled, attempting to hide her surprise. "It's just me and the horse," Jake chuckled, unperturbed by her less than enthusiastic tone. "You seem to have a way with animals. I think it likes you." The horse stepped closer to Sarah, nuzzling her palm as she stroked its neck lightly. She felt a warmth in her chest, part admiration for the horse, part regret for having been so standoffish with Jake. "Have you named it?" she asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "Not yet," Jake replied, taking a seat on a nearby rock, watching her interact with the horse. "I was thinking we could name it something together." An unexpected sense of camaraderie bubbled up, and she felt her defenses begin to crack. "What about Spirit?" she suggested, feeling inspired by the horse's lively energy. "I love it," Jake said, his eyes sparkling with approval. "Spirit it is!" Their shared laughter echoed through the meadow, breaking through the tension that had settled around them since they had met. That moment felt like a shift, a turning point where their struggles began to fade in the background. The bond forged between them was fragile but growing, just like the fledgling friendship between Sarah and Spirit. "Want to take Spirit for a ride?" Jake asked, his enthusiasm infectious. Sarah hesitated. The thought of riding a horse thrilled her, but also terrified her. "I've never ridden before." "Neither have I," Jake admitted, scratching the back of his head. "But it could be fun. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?" She looked at Spirit, who seemed to stand proudly, awaiting their decision. "Okay, let's do it," Sarah said, surprising even herself with the determination in her voice. Minutes later, with Jake's guidance, they managed to saddle Spirit together. Sarah's heart raced as Jake helped her climb up onto the horse's back. Once settled, she could feel Spirit's muscles moving beneath her, ready to gallop. Jake climbed on behind her, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt elated, buoyed by the tactile connection with the horse and the warmth radiating from Jake. "Hold on tight," Jake called, and before she knew it, they were off. Spirit trotted forward, gaining speed gradually. Sarah can barely articulate the feeling of freedom washing over her as the wind whipped through her hair, her heart soaring with each leap. Riding together, Sarah and Jake felt exhilarating, as if they were defying all the obstacles that had previously held them apart. She could barely process how quickly the tension between them dissolved into laughter as they navigated through the vast fields, Spirit darting playfully while they clutched each other for support. Just when they began to feel at ease, a loud snort broke through the quiet. Spirit skidded to a halt, startled. Sarah's heart jumped into her throat as she clung to the reins, feeling Jake's arms tighten around her waist instinctively. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah, just a rabbit," Jake laughed, calming Spirit with a gentle pat. "It's the little things that spook horses." As the creature relaxed, Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You're a lot more reliable than I thought," she teased, sending Jake a playful glare over her shoulder. He chuckled, clearly enjoying the banter. "You're not so bad yourself." They set off again, but the mood had shifted. There was an ease between them now, an understanding that emerged from this shared adventure. Each turn of Spirit's stride matched the rhythm of their laughter, tethering them together in an unexpected alliance. But as they made their way back to the clearing, Sarah noticed a shadow lurking in the distance. A group of riders approached, dressed in matching jackets and wearing the expressions of seasoned equestrians. Fear clutched at her heart as she recognized the horse they were. And the group was approaching them with a sense of authority and dominance. "Hey, that's our horse," shouted one of the riders, a tall girl with piercing blue eyes that demanded attention. "What are you doing with Spirit?" Sarah's heart sank. She stammered, feeling the weight of judgment. Jake was quick to react, standing tall beside her. "We're not stealing it. We just found it here," he explained, his tone steady but loud enough to be heard by the approaching group. "Found it," the girl scoffed. "You think you can just take what isn't yours?" "Hold on," Jake shot back with a hint of anger in his voice. "We didn't take anything. We were just... It doesn't matter what you were doing. Come on, guys. Let's show them who the real riders are," the girl barked, her voice dripping with derogation. A wave of heat coursed through Sarah. Fear took hold, but something else ignited inside her, a fierce protectiveness for Spirit and the bond they had begun to forge. Jake leaned closer to her. "Stay calm. We can handle this. Just back off, will you? We were just enjoying a ride," Sarah found herself calling out. The boldness of her own words surprised her, but she didn't back down. The other riders exchanged glances of disbelief. "Yeah? Prove it," the girl said, her arms crossed defiantly. "I bet you couldn't even manage to keep the horse under control if it's spooked." An idea sparked in Sarah's mind, rooted in the connection she had begun to feel with Spirit. "All right, let's put that to the test then. A race," she proposed, her heart pounding in her chest. Jake's eyes widened, and the group of riders hesitated, but the girl's expression twisted into a challenge as her friends grinned, eager for the showdown. "You're on, but 3 laps around the meadow. Losers walk home," she said. Jake looked at Sarah, uncertainty etched on his face. "Are you sure?" Determined, she replied, "Absolutely. It's time to show them what we've got." Jake mounted Spirit confidently, And as the other riders prepared their horses, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her. It was now or never. She and Jake had to prove themselves. The riders took their positions, their eyes narrowing in challenge. Sarah felt Jake's grip tighten around her waist, and the flicker of hope in her heart shone brighter. As they readied themselves for the race, Sarah looked into Spirit's eyes, pleading for trust. With a deep breath, she urged, "Let's do this." And just like that, they were off a whirlwind of speed and unity, racing not against the fear that had once bound them, but toward a future filled with possibility. As they galloped into the unknown, Sarah felt alive, carrying the weight of her insecurities, yet propelled by a sense of daring that she had never known. In that moment, she realized they might just be able to overcome the shadows that loomed over them. Whatever lay ahead, she was no longer alone in this journey. Secrets and shadows. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, as Sarah and Jake emerged victorious from their race against the local riders. Spirit galloped to a triumphant stop, and both Sarah and Jake dismounted, hearts pounding with the thrill of battle. The air was electric, but the fleeting moment of joy quickly dimmed as they turned to face the defeated group. The piercing glares from the other riders hung in the air, thick with resentment and disbelief. Sarah felt a spike of triumph, strong enough to momentarily drown out the whispers of self-doubt that flitted through her mind. "Maybe we actually belong here," she mused, peering up with newfound confidence. "Nice job back there," Jake said, flashing her an exuberant grin. "Did you see their faces?" "Just wait until they have to walk home," Sarah teased, her laughter ringing like a bell. But something gnawed at her. Despite the victory, she couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled into the pit of her stomach. "Let's give Spirit a break," Jake suggested, as they wandered back to the clearing. The horse contentedly munching grass, blissfully unaware of the tension that surrounded its riders. As they led Spirit away from the meadow, Sarah's thoughts raced. Something fundamental had changed between her and Jake, making their bond feel more substantial in that whirlwind moment. Yet a whisper of doubt crept in. If they could be so easily challenged by others, how fragile was this newfound friendship? Days turned into a week, and still the thrill of victory lingered in the air. Jake and Sarah spent every afternoon riding with Spirit, exploring hidden paths and game trails that wound through the forest. The beauty of nature enveloped them, each ride acting as a bridge that closed the gap of their initial distrust. But while the trust grew on the surface, deeper currents laid hidden beneath. One afternoon, while they rode through a secluded part of the woods, Sarah noticed Jake staring silently at a weathered tree with deep gashes carved into its bark. She felt the tension in his shoulders and the distance that seemed to creep back between them. "What's wrong?" she asked, pulling Spirit to a halt. "You can tell me." Jake hesitated, eyes drifting from the tree to the ground. "It's nothing, just old memories," he finally said, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't decipher. "Old memories?" Sarah pressed, her curiosity ignited. "What happened here?" "It's a long story," he murmured, finally looking her way. "Let's just say I used to come here a lot when I was younger. There's history, and it's not all good." Her heart ached for him. She could sense pain lingering beneath those words. "You don't have to share, but just know I'm here for you." Jake's expression shifted, an intensity shining in his eyes, but then he turned away, his fears tangled up in silence. "Okay," she said softly, "but I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." Though Sarah felt the bond deepen, the shadows of Jake's unspoken words hung like clouds on the horizon. The more time they spent together, the more she yearned to know him, but she didn't want to pry. Trust needed time to grow. As the sun slipped below the treetops, casting dimming light through the leaves, they began to head back. Suddenly, Spirit pricked its ears, jerking its head as if sensing something amiss. The horse whinnied nervously, and Sarah's heart raced alongside it. "Did you hear that?" she asked, glancing around, the palpable tension breaking her momentary reverie. "Yeah, something feels off." Jake's brow furrowed as he scanned the woods. Just then, a rustle came from the bushes, a sharp crack echoing through the silence. Sarah's pulse quickened, instinctively pulling Spirit close. "Stay calm," Jake whispered, but his eyes betrayed his concern. We should move toward the clearing. They turned around slowly, but before they could take more than a few steps, a figure emerged from the foliage. A scruffy-looking man, wild hair framing his face, stepped into their path. His clothes were torn and dusty, and a disheveled backpack clung to his shoulder. For a moment, the world fell silent, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the anxious snorts of Spirit. "What are you two kids doing out here?" the man asked, his voice gravelly and low. Jake instinctively positioned himself in front of Sarah, a protective stance that further intensified the charged atmosphere. "We're just riding. No harm in that. What's it to you?" Sarah added, feeling a surge of defiance course through her. This was their territory now, and they weren't going to be intimidated. The man's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing them. "You think you can just roam around these woods? These are dangerous times." "Dangerous?" Jake challenged, eyes hardening. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, invading their space. "This is not just a playground for kids. You don't know what's hiding in these woods. Trouble can find you in a heartbeat." "What kind of trouble?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She didn't want to show fear, but the shadows that danced around them suddenly felt suffocating. "People come here for different reasons. Some carry secrets and others don't leave," the man replied cryptically before taking a step back, his eyes flashing with something dark. "What are you talking about?" Jake asked, his tone edged with confusion. "Just think about it," the man taunted, pointing at Jake. "You two might want to watch your backs. Not everyone here is friendly." With that, he turned and melted back into the shadows of the trees, leaving Sarah and Jake standing rigidly beside Spirit. The weight of his words sank in like a stone in water. What was that all about? Sarah breathed, gripping the reins tightly, her heart pounding. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice low, frowning as the unease settled over them. He could just be some random guy, but still. "Should we be worried?" "We don't know what kind of trouble he's talking about," Jake mused, shifting nervously. "Let's just get back, okay? We'll figure it out." They began to walk back, but the idyllic feeling of their rides came to an abrupt halt. The shadows around them grew longer, more intimidating, and Sarah couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, half anticipating the man's return. Once they reached the clearing, the clouds scat across the moon, dimming their surroundings. The woods that had felt welcoming in the light of day suddenly took on a foreboding quality. They were enveloped in a cocoon of uncertainty, their laughter fading into silence. "Jake, there's something bothering you, and I want you to know you can talk to me," Sarah said, trying to coax the words from him as they let Spirit graze peacefully. "I know, but it's complicated. It's more than just this guy," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let me help." She stepped closer to him, hoping to bridge the gap that had emerged like an invisible wall. "It's my dad," Jake blurted out suddenly, eyes glazing over. "Ever since he started dating your mom, things changed, and not just with you. I feel lost, you know, like I'm not really part of this family." "Jake." "No, listen," he interrupted, his voice tightening. "This guy, he reminds me of some things I'd rather forget. My past isn't just the woods. It's deeper and darker. I don't want to drag you into it." "Jake, we're already in this together," Sarah urged gently. "If you share your burdens, maybe they won't feel so heavy anymore." He hesitated, his vulnerability hanging in the air. "It just scares me that I might lose this, lose us." Before she could respond, the wind picked up, rustling the branches ominously. Both turned their heads toward the darkened woods beyond the clearing, hearts racing at the sudden chill that swept through the air. Then, from the shadows, came the echoing sound of hooves pounding against the ground, followed by loud shouts blending with the noise of racing thunder. "Jake!" Sarah gasped. "It's them!" He gripped her arm tightly, fear creeping into his eyes as they saw figures barreling toward them on horseback. The same group that had challenged them, returning for a rematch. "What do we do?" Sarah squeaked, adrenaline flooding her veins. "We stand our ground," Jake exclaimed, determination flaring as he bounded toward Spirit, the protective instinct taking over. With fierce resolve, they prepared to face the newcomers. Everything within Sarah urged her to run, but with Jake by her side, She found her footing. No longer were the shadows just looming behind them. They were now charging forward, and what was waiting in the darkness could either shatter their bond or give it the strength to endure. In that moment of uncertainty, one thing became clear. The challenges ahead would test the limits of their friendship in ways they never imagined. And as fear mingled with the undeniable spark of loyalty, they would have to face it together. The competition day. The morning sun peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays across the meadow where Sarah and Jake had shared so many adventures. Yet today felt different. An electric atmosphere buzzed in the air as they prepared for the annual local horse competition. Excitement mingled with nerves, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked, looking both anxious and eager as he saddled Spirit, his brow slightly furrowed. "I suppose as ready as I'll ever be," Sarah replied, trying to sound confident. The prospect of competing against the group that had confronted them still loomed large in her mind. She could feel the weight of their previous encounter, and nervousness settled in her stomach. "Let's focus on what we can control. Just remember, it's about having fun and showing what we can do together," he encouraged, offering a reassuring smile. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She thought of how far they had come since their first ride, how the laughter and bond between them had deepened amidst the shadows of uncertainty. She wouldn't let intimidation ruin this opportunity. As they arrived at the competition grounds, the atmosphere was alive with the sounds of horses whinnying and people chattering excitedly. Colorful banners fluttered in the wind, and blocks of spectators began taking their seats. The energy was palpable, and tension hung thick like the humid air. "Let's check in," Jake suggested, leading the way through the bustling crowd. They approached the registration table, where a woman greeted them with a clipboard in hand. "Welcome. I hope you two are ready to have a fantastic time," she said, her smile brightening the day. "What event are you entering?" "Western riding," Jake proclaimed confidently. As they registered, Sarah felt butterflies invade her stomach. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" she whispered nervously to Jake. "Trust me, we are going to rock it. Just remember to breathe," he replied, giving her a quick nudge. As the day unfolded, they watched plenty of skilled riders showcase their talents. Each performance was breathtaking speed, agility, and precision woven seamlessly together as horse and rider danced across the arena. Sarah felt a deep sense of respect for the loyal animals and those who understood them. But with every flawless routine, her self-doubt crept back in. Jake sensed her unease and squeezed her arm. "Hey, we're here to enjoy ourselves. Take it one step at a time." When it came time to prepare for their turn, Sarah tried to shake off her nerves. As they entered the arena, the electrifying energy from the crowd enveloped them. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "Just listen to Spirit," Jake whispered. "We've trained hard, remember?" With those words, they began their routine. Spirit moved gracefully beneath them, its gait steady, guided by the bond they had forged over countless hours. The spectators watched in silence as they executed every move turns, stops, and gallops, pulling off their routine with surprising synergy. Just when it felt like they were in perfect sync, a loud voice erupted from the audience. "Is that all you've got?" It was the girl from the rival group, the one who had challenged them last week. "What a joke." The crowd buzzed and Sarah's heart raced. Jake glanced back at the girl, his jaw tightening. "Ignore them. Just focus on Spirit." With renewed determination, they completed the routine, ending on a high note. As they left the arena, applause erupted around them, but Sarah couldn't shake the taunts that echoed in her mind. "See, we did well," Jake beamed, taking a deep breath as they stood by Spirit, who seemed to relish the attention. "Yeah, but those comments, don't sweat it. Let's see how we rank," Jake said, motioning toward the judges' table. As they waited for the results, Sarah felt anxiety creeping back in, but she fought to suppress it. A few minutes later, the speakers crackled to life. "And the results for the Western riding event are in?" The announcer's voice boomed across the field, silencing the crowd. As the announcer called out third place, Sarah's heart pounded. "We need to be in the top 3. The announcer's voice rose with excitement. "In second place, we have..." Sarah held her breath. Jake squeezed her hand, and she could see the anticipation written all over his face. And in first place, with an outstanding performance, Jake and Sarah, with spirit. In disbelief, Sarah felt her legs weaken as the crowd erupted into cheers. "We did it! We actually did it!" she exclaimed, her voice booming with joy. Jake's face lit up, a broad grin spreading across his features as they made their way to the podium. But just as they approached the judges, an ominous cloud drifted over the arena. The same group of rivals stood to the side, their expressions darkened. The girl stepped forward defiantly, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think this is over? You're just beginners pretending to be something you're not." Jake's expression hardened. "You're just sore losers. We earned this. The competition isn't just about talent. It's about respect," she shot back. "And you've shown none. Maybe you could learn a thing or two about losing gracefully," Sarah challenged, her heart pounding. "This is our moment, and we earned it!" The tension crackled like static in the air, and the crowd's cheers faltered as the girl took a step closer. "You may have won today, but don't get too comfortable. There are bigger things at stake here. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Then bring it on," Jake shot back, his voice steady and unwavering. "We're not afraid of you." Just then, their coach intervened, sensing the rising hostility. "All right, everyone. Let's remember that sportsmanship is what this event is about." The girl scoffed and stepped back, her friends following suit. The atmosphere felt charged, and Sarah could almost taste the bitterness lingering as they reclaimed the moment. As they took their trophies, Sarah's excitement mingled with concern. What did the rival group mean? What stakes were they talking about? The thought weighed heavily in her mind, even as they basked in their victory. "Let's celebrate," Jake exclaimed, slipping his arm over her shoulders as they walked away from the arena, their trophies gleaming in the sunlight. But Sarah couldn't shake the unease that lingered. As they moved toward the festivities, they heard a commotion echoing from behind the stalls. A sudden shout drew their attention. "Help, someone! Get back!" Instinctively, Sarah and Jake exchanged glances. "What's going on?" Jake muttered, a frown settling on his face. Without a moment's hesitation, they turned and started running toward the chaos. The atmosphere transformed from jubilant to frantic. Spectators crowded around a corral, their expressions a mix of fear and confusion. Sarah's pulse raced as they reached the edge of the crowd. At the center of the commotion stood Spirit, kicking and thrashing wildly. A large man was trying to calm the horse, but the more he yelled, the more frantic Spirit became. "Get back! It's dangerous!" he shouted, waving his arms. "Spirit!" Sarah cried, her heart racing. "Jake, we have to do something!" "I'll try to calm him," Jake shouted back over the noise. Without waiting for a response, he plunged into the crowd, pushing his way toward the horse. "Be careful," Sarah shouted, but her voice was lost as chaos erupted around them. The horse was panicking, and Sarah's heart ached watching it struggle against the heavy halter. Jake reached Spirit, speaking softly, but the horse continued to thrash madly. Sarah could feel the tension in the air. Everyone was on edge. The grim realization washed over her. Spirit was scared, and Jake was in danger. "Spirit, it's okay," Jake coaxed, extending his arm. "You know me. Just breathe." But the horse whinnied wildly, the panic radiating from its powerful frame. Suddenly, it broke free from the man's hold, rearing up as a terrified gasp swept through the crowd. "Jake, watch out," Sarah screamed, fear gripping her throat. In that moment, as Spirit charged forward, Jake lunged toward the horse, desperate to calm it down. The arena fell silent as the scene unfolded in slow motion. Jake's determination ignited a fire within Sarah. With adrenaline surging through her veins, she pushed past the crowd. "Jake! Spirit! I'm coming!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Just as Spirit lunged forward in pure desperation, Jake managed to grasp the reins, pulling the horse back with all his strength. "Hold on, buddy, please," he shouted, breathing in sync with the creature's frightened breaths. "That's it. Easy," Sarah urged as she raced closer, her heart pounding in harmony with Spirit's frantic thumps. "Don't let go, Jake," she yelled, feeling her determination clamp down on fear. She approached cautiously, extending her hand. "Spirit, it's me. It's okay." The horse turned its head, eyes wide and panicked, but as they locked gazes, Sarah felt a connection. "You know me, remember?" She reached out, palm open and steady, letting the horse smell her hand. For a brief moment, time suspended, and the air was thick with tension. The crowd held its breath as Spirit slowed, taking a hesitant step back. Jake steadied himself, his grip tightening, and then miraculously Spirit began to calm. Its muscles relaxed, and slowly it lowered its head, leaning into Sarah's touch. "That's it, buddy. We're here," she whispered. Jake's breathing steadied as he joined her side, both offering their hands to the horse. The crowd erupted into relieved applause. But Sarah felt a rush of emotions flood over her, fear, relief, and an overwhelming sense of unity. As they stood alongside Spirit, the cheers from the audience blended into the backdrop, and the previous tensions began to dissolve once again. The rival group stood silently, their expressions shifting as they absorbed the moment unfolding before them. "Thank you, both of you," the man holding Spirit shouted, his voice breaking through the crowd. "I thought we were going to lose him." "Just doing what friends do," Jake replied, a sense of calm washing over him as he patted Spirit's flank affectionately. Sarah stood between them, feeling the weight of the day slowly slip away. Perhaps their victory extended beyond the competition. It was about the bond they were creating, the trust they were learning to share. But in the back of her mind, the words of the girl still echoed ominously. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Who were these people, and what lay ahead for Sarah and Jake? The day had already taken so many unexpected turns, and the unease lingered like a shadow in the twilight. "Let's take Spirit back home," Sarah suggested, the gravity of their experiences settling into the atmosphere around them. As they turned to leave, the crowd began to disperse, and the lingering tension from earlier floated away. They were proud of what they had accomplished, but the undercurrent of darkness still loomed. Little did they know, tomorrow would bring challenges that would test them in ways they never expected. With Spirit safely in tow, they walked back side by side, knowing they had faced one daunting challenge together, but the journey was far from over. As they left the warm light of the arena behind, they stepped closer into the shadows of uncertainty, ready to confront whatever lay ahead together.